Hi guys, it's ASBYT and this is the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro. There are so many flagship features packed into this beautiful slab of a phone, it's a straight savage. But importantly, they've been able to do all this and keep it priced within the mid-range. So how have they managed this? What corners have they cut? And will those omissions affect you? Should you buy this phone? Let's dive. Quick disclaimer, Xiaomi reached out to sponsor this video in line with their official launch of the Mi 10T series, but all views are my own, both good and bad. So firstly, let's break down the main areas that Xiaomi have looked to focus on with the Mi 10T Pro, and they've gone pretty brutal on those. So they are as follows: display, camera, battery, and performance. That's pretty much all you need in a phone, I think. So probably the quickest review I've ever done. Have a nice day. It can't be that simple. We'll dive deeper. Let's dissect those categories. So the killer feature with the display is of course the 144Hz refresh rate. So it refreshes 144 times per second. Awesome. It makes this phone as smooth as a seal slipping back into the sea. And that was some serious alliteration. But it's true. Using Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Yes, I upload short videos to TikTok now, just not the dancing kind. Maybe I should. What do you think? Let me know. We digress. Multitasking, skipping between apps, and gaming are simply effortless. The only other phones that currently have a refresh rate as high as this are a few of the dedicated gaming ones. It's 6.67 inches in size, so it's certainly not small, and with its Gorilla Glass and metal construction, which is beautifully premium, if not an absolute nightmare for keeping clean, there's a definite heft to it. But media consumption and gaming, more on gaming later, are an absolute joy. Whatever the frame rate is of the movie you're watching or game you're playing, you can expect one of the smoothest experiences possible, with the phone adapting to content automatically. There is a slightly bigger chin than the rest of the bezels, but it's not garish by any means, and there is no in-display fingerprint scanner, as that's now been moved to the power button on the side. Now there are two main areas that Xiaomi have looked to slice a little bit of the price off the top when making this display, and that is number one, it's Full HD Plus and not Quad HD or 4K, and number two, it's LCD and not OLED or AMOLED. Now yes, it would be lovely to have a Quad HD Plus 144Hz refresh rate AMOLED display, but that phone would be priced far higher at $1,000+. I personally still feel that on a smartphone-sized screen, 1080p is more than acceptable. And when it comes to LCD or AMOLED, I personally would always go with AMOLED if given the choice, but I must give props here to Xiaomi. This really is one of the best LCD displays I've ever used. Yes, you don't get the infinite blacks of an AMOLED, but it does have really vivid colours and nice contrast, and outside of when you have a white screen in an app or browser and there is a slight token discoloration right on the edges and around that punch hole camera cutout, more on camera shortly, I honestly think at first glance this could pass as AMOLED. Big words, I know, but I back myself. Something the Mi 10T Pro does when it comes to performance and the juices of battery. Sounds a bit weird. So this phone is cooking with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865, and its reputation precedes it. Yes, we have that tiny slither improvements of the Plus variant available, and the next-gen 875 will be available in around 4 months' time, but basically if you want pretty much the best chipset on an Android phone right now, then cop this chip. It's a monster. And with the phone's stereo speakers and up to 8GB of RAM and 256GB of UFS 3.1 storage, for games like PubG, Fortnite, COD, the list goes on, this will not even break a sweat, as you can see from the benchmark test results. Also, the inclusion of a wide range of 5G bands will open up the future of advancements in this gaming area and compatibility with more networks in more locations. And while we're on the number 5, the battery capacity starts with a 5. 5000 mAh, if you're asking, which is music to my ears. I've been easily able to get through a whole day's use with no charging needed and with the 144Hz always on. If you do need to add a little juice, they do include a 33-watt Type-C charger in the box, which is pretty fast. It's not super fast. We've seen real advancements in charging speed technology, but we're still getting around 50 minutes from 0 to 100%, so that is still pretty good. There is unfortunately no wireless charging. That is one of the features which disappears due to the price. Let me know in the comments whether wireless charging is a deal breaker or not for you. And then there's camera. Now, the recent trend, outside of probably Apple and Google, has been to stuff as many big numbers as possible into smartphone camera hardware. Throw as many eye-catching number headlines into the mix and see which actually sticks with the consumers. And the results have kind of been a bit of a mixed bag. Yes, when the first 108 megapixel sensor came out last year, I think on the Mi Note 10, everyone in the industry went a bit nuts. But the enthusiasm died down a little bit because people began to realise that massive sensor sizes isn't the be-all and end-all if it's not backed up with the appropriate software. So what have Xiaomi done here, and what is the software sorcery that's got everyone's tongues wagging? Well, yes, the 108 megapixel primary sensor has made a reappearance alongside a 30 megapixel ultra wide and a 5 megapixel macro. Now, I personally don't really have a use for a macro lens, but if you do, without being brilliant, it's certainly more than passable and you can get some really great macro close-up shots. And the ultra-wide is at 123 degrees, so it's definitely one of the widest available also. The 108 megapixel mode is not actually set as default. You have to go into the More section and choose it. And it works really well if you need really high-res shots, which you can then choose to crop and select different areas of the bigger picture to use individually. I've said it before and I'll say it again, for what I use a smartphone camera for, i.e. for social media for example, the fact that those sorts of sites compress images so much anyway, I don't necessarily feel the need to use the massive high megapixel count camera modes. I tend to just use the default camera mode anyway, because I don't really see a massive difference once it gets compressed that much. But I do find there are times when I do need that higher res shot and it comes in really handy. And if you're a kind of creative person, having that option is brilliant. Photos on the whole have really nice saturated colours with pretty great dynamic range, fusing the shadows and the bright spots really well. And the processing speeds, even when using the 108 megapixel mode, are nice and snappy. There is a slight kind of beautify mode-ish thing going on when you take portraits and selfies. It's fairly common with a lot of Xiaomi smartphone cameras, and it's something that you either quite like or you're kind of not that mad keen on. Individual, subjective, but it's there nevertheless. So what is this sorcery, I hear you ask? Well, Xiaomi have introduced a whole set of features, including time-lapse selfie, front and back, which allows you to record video using, clues in the name, the front and back camera at the same time, and long exposure mode, brilliant for creating really artistic pieces. But the clone feature is where the real magic happens. Sound intrigued? Well, basically, when selected, you can take 4 photos of a person over a period of time, and it will stitch them together into one photo. When done right, it's pretty something. Yes, it's a little bit gimmicky and it only works with people and not pets, for example, which would be a nice touch, but it definitely ties into the theme of the launch, which focuses around creativity. And it works both in photo and video. You can shoot 4K 60 on the rear and you can even use 8K as well. It is a headline feature for sure, but not necessarily massively important for me when the 4K is as good as it is, with amongst other things its stabilization and lots of packed in software features such as movie frame, straighten and track moving objects. I personally probably would have preferred to have seen 4K on the rear and on the front, which is capped at only 1080p, than having that 8K feature, but to be fair, 1080p on a front-facing camera is still more than enough for most people. So you can't really accuse Xiaomi of being understated when it comes to the camera, with hardware and software stacked to the hills. But it does feel a little bit like a scattergun approach when it comes to who they're trying to market this phone at when it comes to that camera. It feels like they've tried to bloat the camera up with as many possible features available to try and appeal to as many people as possible. And while that means there isn't one specific person I can say this is the exact camera for you, it will probably appeal to the social media casual creative, which probably take up quite a large portion of smartphone sales, so it's probably quite a smart move from them. These stacks of features are also prevalent in the software, which follows a similar vein. MiUI 12 over the top of Android 10 is not a stock feel at all. If you want something that is as close to Google's Pixel phones, for example, then don't go with this. But that's not to say that this is not good software. And to some, it's really intuitive. It takes little things from stock like the app drawer and similar gesture support, has an iOS type of vibe about the settings control center and notification swipe down, and it feels like Xiaomi are kind of taking little software tips and tweaks from lots of different places, all the best bits, and kind of amalgamating them all into one flowing software. They're trying to make this kind of the best of everything. There is a fair amount of bloatware and some ads, but you can delete, hide, and turn off system ads in your settings. And while I'm personally more of a stock fan, hold my hands up, as I say every time I talk MiUI, it is one of the fastest and most fluid softwares that I have used. So you can see the areas that Xiaomi have looked to compromise on, and those areas to focus on. It's not a perfect phone by any means, but then again, neither are the £1,000+ phones that are out there. And considering this phone is priced in the mid-ranges, you do get so much for that. It's not cheap, don't get me wrong, but it does offer some real flagship features at a fair amount less. It sits in a very competitive area of the market, but amongst a few others, Xiaomi with the Mi 10T Pro are really looking to reshuffle the pack and reshape the world of the flagship killer. Official finalised pricing as well as much more information will be made available during the UK live launch 2 PM on Monday the 19th. Make sure you check it out. Let me know in the comments what you think of the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro, and let me know what's your favourite flagship killer available at this moment in time. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and also check out some of the other videos that I'll have dotted around the screen here of similar phones, similar prices, so that you can get a good idea of what's available right now. If you want to hear more of my awful voice and see more of my ugly face, then drop a subscribe and you'll be notified every time I post a new video. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. Stay pure, peace out.
Do just what you want.